US President Donald Trump has announced that his administration will begin the process of ending Hong Kong's special status in response to China's plans to impose a new security law on the city. Trump said that China has breached Hong Kong's autonomy by going ahead with the national security law, which will change the city's legal system and ban what China describes as secessionist activities.
The Chinese government's move against Hong Kong is the latest in a series of measures that are diminishing the city's long-standing and very proud status. This is a tragedy for the people of Hong Kong, the people of China, and indeed the people of the world. China claims it is protecting national security. But the truth is that Hong Kong was secure and prosperous as a free society. Beijing's decision reverses all of that. It extends the reach of China's invasive state security apparatus into what was formerly a bastion of liberty. China's latest incursion, along with other recent developments that degraded the territory's freedoms, makes clear that Hong Kong is no longer sufficiently autonomous to warrant the special treatment that we have afforded the territory since the handover. China has replaced its promised formula of one country, two systems with one country, one system. Therefore, I am directing my administration to begin the process of eliminating policy exemptions that give Hong Kong different and special treatment.
Also said that he will protect the U.S. from Chinese spying. Remember, the Trump administration is planning to crack down on Chinese students accused of spying for Beijing.
For years, the government of China has conducted illicit espionage to steal our industrial secrets, of which there are many. Today, I will issue a proclamation to better secure our nation's vital university research and to suspend the entry of certain foreign nationals from China who we have identified as potential security risks.
Hong Kong now stands to lose its status as a financial hub as Washington moves to cut off its trade ties with the city. The U.S. will also end its visa-free travel deals with Hong Kong. So far, the U.S. treated Hong Kong as a separate trading entity apart from China. Meanwhile, China has blocked an attempt by the UK and the US to raise the Hong Kong security law issue at the United Nations. In a statement, the Chinese government said that the US and the UK were raising the issue for their own political purposes. Never before has Hong Kong been so divided along political lines. There is global support for pro-democracy voices, but factions closer to Beijing are not giving up without a fight. More than 1.85 million Hong Kong residents have signed a petition supporting the new security law. The petition is being circulated by a group called United Front, supporting national security legislation. The pro-China group has set up walk-in stands to collect signatures from like-minded residents. Hong Kong's Chief Executive Carrie Lam was among those who visited the walk-in stands. Many senior officials in her government have also endorsed it.
事實上，呢4個字咧，同我哋日常係息息相關嘅。如果大家記得過去1年，特別喺呢個北角區啦，有陣時都唔敢落街，係咪？係。一落街會俾人可能私了啦，又或者咧就係掟嘢啦、縱火啦。咁呢啲久而久之係會危害到國家同埋香港社會嘅安全。咁所以希望大家都記住，國家安全人人有責，我哋全力支持，好嗎？好。
The petition has been in circulation since last Sunday. While Chinese media has hailed it as a grassroots level movement, chances are this is another choreographed move by Beijing to drum up support within Hong Kong. Global opinion is stacked against China. The United Nations Security Council is set to have a closed-door discussion on the Hong Kong situation at the US and the UK's request. This is a complete role reversal from last year, when China pushed for an informal UNSC meet on Kashmir. This time, of course, China has been terming it as an attempt to meddle in its internal affairs. We're now being joined by award-winning photographer, journalist and National Geographic explorer, Laurel Chor from Hong Kong. Thank you, Laurel, for being with us here on the broadcast. Talk to us about these walk-in stands which have been set up and the kind of support they've been receiving in Hong Kong.
I actually haven't seen them around, but I would be very skeptical of those signatures collected. These kinds of campaigns have a history of inflating the signature numbers. There's been eyewitness accounts of these kinds of stands collecting multiple signatures from the same person. And ultimately, you kind of have to wonder how much legitimacy this law has if the people who support it are forced to go out on the street to collect signatures to say that they support it, when actually no one has a say over it. The point of collecting signatures is to detract from the fact that no one in Hong Kong had a say over it, including its government.
Right, and now with the US's latest move, which is going to cut off trade ties with Hong Kong and sever this special status that was given to Hong Kong, it could have a devastating impact on the city.
Yes, well, to be precise, what has happened is that the Secretary of State has declared that Hong Kong is no longer autonomous. Now, what this means, because of the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act passed last year, is that the U.S. can now impose sanctions on Hong Kong. It could, for example, start imposing tariffs on Hong Kong goods the same way it imposes tariffs on Chinese goods. It could ban American companies from selling certain technologies to Hong Kong companies. So it's not quite cutting off trade ties, but it could very well have significant economic ramifications for the city. But we still don't know what measures will be taken. So for now, we don't know.
So right now, Hong Kong is right now a battleground between the U.S. and China. The Cold War between the U.S. and China is clearly played out, is being played out with Hong Kong at the center of it.
Yes, Chinese-U.S. relations are certainly at its worst for many years. And it seems like Hong Kong is being played around like a pawn in this game. But ultimately, it's difficult because Hong Kong is a part of China, and that's recognized by the international community. But at the same time, Hong Kong protesters are appealing to the U.S. And Taiwan is also looking very closely at what's happening in Hong Kong, because Taiwan is also similarly at the crossroads of this tension. And the U.S. is an ally of Taiwan, but China claims that Taiwan is a part of itself when Taiwan itself claims that it's not. So Hong Kong is certainly at the crossroads of that, but I think it's probably more tense around Taiwan, where there are actual military exercises being played to show force.
Right. Even before the pandemic hit, there were strong protests by the pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong, and now post the lockdown, they're continuing within the Hong Kong Legislative Council. There are plans for a larger wave of protests in the days going forward.
Yes, there are certainly protests coming. I think the response from the protesters has been fairly muted since the news broke last week. The police have shown that they are willing to crack down further on protests, in that they are stopping the protests before they even have momentum. They're breaking up marches before they even get violent, which means they're also using tear gas and pepper bullets on peaceful protesters. They're also detaining dozens of people on the street. Apparently 100 school children were arrested on Wednesday. So the crackdown does seem to be intensifying in terms of the police being less discriminate about who they're detaining and arresting. And it seems like they want this to have a deterrent effect. So there are certainly going to be more protests, but with these kinds of tactics from the police, I'm not sure we'll see the same momentum that we saw last year.
So in that sense, do you think Hong Kong is preparing for an eventuality, be it the national security law or the national anthem law for that matter?
Yes, I think, Hong Kong people knew from the moment we were handed back to China that Hong Kong's time as an autonomous city was up in at most 50 years, and that time has been cut short by the passing of these laws. And protesters also know that they are probably not going to be able to change the outcome. But for protesters, the dozens of protesters I've spoken to, it's important for them just to make a stand. So I think we will see them make a stand, whether or not these protesters think they have a chance of actually preventing these laws from passing.
In that sense, what are you seeing as the future of Hong Kong from here on? It's been a situation in which the fault lines have clearly been exposed within Hong Kong.
Yes, that's a very good question. No one knows. We are in uncharted territory. The news last week was shocking, and people are still processing what this means for Hong Kong. And then came Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's decertification of Hong Kong. So it's very unclear what will happen to the city. Will it lose its status as a financial hub? It's unclear. Will it lose its freedoms and rights so that it completely resembles China in that sense? We don't know. But that is the worst case scenario. That is what people are scared of. But maybe there will be some sort of middle ground where China uses the laws to stamp out dissent the best they can, and Hong Kong is otherwise able to function more or less the same, minus, of course, many freedoms and rights. It's a very difficult question, and I think this is why people in Hong Kong feel so much anxiety, why there's so much anger, and why there's so much public outrage. This is a promise that was broken to Hong Kong people and to the international community, and it threatens the sanctity of international treaties.
Award-winning photographer, journalist, and National Geographic explorer Laurel Chor joining us live from Hong Kong with that perspective. Thank you, Laurel, for being with us here on My Own World as well.
Thank you.